Okay, relative to purchasing rental properties, there are a few steps we have to master in the beginning of the process to make sure that later on we're making very good informed decisions. Remember, you've always got to have the right education, the right information, and the right action steps to get the right results, okay? It all starts in the beginning with desktop analysis, okay? So we like to start with a tool from the U.S. Postal Service called EDDM. It's actually more specifically called Melissa Data. The link is a lot longer than that. Okay, remember this is in your material. melissadata.com. It's you go in there. You can plug in your zip codes one by one. Every zip code in the U.S. is in here. And by the way, in Canada we have a different version of this. We use Canada Post, obviously. Okay, and what we do is we plug in every zip code that makes in the area. And we're looking for here in the apartment column, how many apartments are in the area. And the reason is we know that generally speaking, wherever we have more apartments, we generally have more rentals. Would you agree? What's generally true. It's not an exact match. Not every apartment is rented, just like not every single family home is lived in by the owners. The point is, wherever you have a higher number of apartments, you generally have a higher number of rentals. So we only search these areas, okay? Now, there's a second part to this, and we use our planning commissions to help us determine the second part. Okay, here's a sample of a planning commission website. Planning commission websites give you all kinds of valuable data. They take data from other public sources like uscensus.gov or Stats Canada if we're in Canada. And you can get a lot of information relative to what we call the census tracts. You can go broad county level, then maybe zip code, then maybe town or county, or vice versa, county and then town, and then neighborhood down to the census tract area. Well, within those areas, we get some vital statistics, and one of those statistics is this: the percentage of owners and the percentage of renters, okay? Here's what I'm getting at, the sweet spot. This is generally true almost everywhere we've been. When you're buying rentals, you want to be in an area where the percentage of renters is between 1/3 of the residents and 2/3 of the residents. In other words, between 1/3 and 2/3 of the residents are living in rentals, okay? Now let's think about that ratio. If less than 1/3 of the population is renting, that means greater than 2/3 are owner occupants. They live in the properties that they own, or they own the properties that they live in, depending on how you look at it. Well, those are probably good areas for flipping, okay? And you can buy rentals there, and conventional wisdom would say, let's buy the rentals there because they're great areas. And that's true. However, you're not going to have as many rentals, and when you're leasing out when you're renting rentals, when you're leasing rentals, you've got to have some 1 bedrooms, some 2 bedrooms, things like that, and of course a couple of occasional 3 bedrooms. But single family homes are generally rented to families, and there's fewer families renting single family homes than there are people renting 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, okay? So this is why this is so important. The other thing too is income versus cost basis. The rent you receive versus the cost basis of the property. The ratio is generally not going to be as good on single family homes as it is on apartment, like 4-unit buildings, for example, that have 4 2-bedroom apartments, okay? So now let's think about the reverse. Let's say there's greater than 2/3 renters in an area. Well, what might that mean? Well, with some exceptions, it could mean that maybe the area is really a lower end area, you know, like a C minus, even a D area. And I don't advocate buying in those areas. You can, and I've used to do it. But you're always better off finding the C plus properties, right? In the areas where there's decent access to shopping, transportation, maybe high-tech office parks, things like that, hospitals, universities, okay? So now let's take an extreme example. Let's say an area is greater than 80% renters. Generally, or 90%. That sometimes is like a war zone. Again, not always. I'm just making general statements here. There are exceptions, like hospitals, universities. When you're around a hospital, university, you might want to write this down, or better yet, a teaching hospital associated with the university. You've now got the graduate students, the interns, the residents, the nurses, a great renter base, and the percentage of renters are generally pretty high. So I would definitely invest in those areas. I just want to give you that information, and we arrive at it by using Melissa Data and your planning commission websites. Okay, hope that done. Now, by the way, the marketing to get the actual owners of the properties is a whole different matter. We'll do that in a separate session. Okay, we'll see you on the next one. Take care. God bless.